Oh man, I pulled out the classic intro for everybody. Dude, this is going to be a fun conversation for everybody that's watching this video. I have spent some time with Renzo. Renzo is in Detroit, Michigan. Obviously, I'm Ian of Austin. I'm here in Austin, Texas area, and it's interesting to see the difference between our two markets. And so I don't know if people understand how much opportunity is happening in Detroit right now, because I have a lot of investor clients that are interested in Austin, but I wanted to have this conversation because I think Detroit is an untapped market. Renzo, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's get into it, man.
Hey, Ian. Good evening, man. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a fun conversation. And yeah, for the people that don't know me, my name is Renzo Delso. I'm an agent. I've been doing this since 2020. I started pretty young, started at 19. I'm 24 now. And yeah, like you were saying, I feel like people are just getting, the buzz about Detroit. I feel like, there was like a stigma before about, Detroit being, this city was, like downtrending and there was nothing going on. But it's actually the opposite. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think the city has grown a lot, and I think it's a really great, market for someone that wants to invest, especially in the Midwest.
Dude, I've been to Detroit, I think 5 times in the last 2 years, something to that effect. I've taught classes there. I've done panels. I've been with you and your your people and teams that you work with. And I'll say, when I spent the time visiting downtown Detroit, I was impressed with, again, the revitalization. I will say there are still areas that, like I had to go visit 8 Mile because that's the place you're supposed to go visit. I will say there are some places where you're like, oh, okay, I don't know if I can do that. So tell me a little bit about, let me start off with our median price point. So in Austin, our median price point, it depends if you're counting the city itself or if you're talking about the suburbs. If you're talking about both city, suburbs, all of that, we're looking at about 430, 440,000 right now. That's our median. What's your median for the Detroit metro?
Like right now, for like if we want to talk like the whole Metro
The
Detroit
whole
market,
metro, yeah, like including the lower and the higher price stuff, yeah.
right now the average sales price is 319,000, but just for the whole metro.
319.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
if we're
see,
just
we have properties here, like you can get a property here in Austin for like 260, like a decent prop. And I say decent, but something that you can work with, right? If you're like a first time buyer or a beginner investor, I'll say it that way, like where you don't have to do a ton of work. What about for you?
like for us in the whole metro area, you can still get pretty decent homes for like between 90 to 120, but they're gonna need some work. Like my market, I feel like it's very diverse. You got your like downriver area, you got the city of Detroit, you got the east side, which is Macomb, Macomb County. We're doing a lot of buildings or new construction. You got Oakland County. So like you have a lot of options if you want to invest on what you want to do. If you want to invest like in multi-families or new construction or single families. But to give you an idea, like I was saying, the average sales price of the metro area is 319, and if we're counting the city of Detroit only, it's only $124,000. That's the average sales price for a home in the city of Detroit.
City of Austin, our median is actually higher, closer to the 515 range, 515, 530-ish range. So the city is quite a bit more expensive. So you're saying the city, Detroit proper, the median price is 100-ish?
Yep.
That's
yeah, that's very low when you compare it to other markets like yours, like Cali, Florida.
Absolutely.
It's well below like the national average.
Yeah. I was with we were talking to some of the lender partners we work with. We're not name dropping here, but some of the lender partners we work with, and one of them goes, yeah, I'm working on what did she call, like a 4-pack or a 10-pack or something like that. And I was like, I've never heard that term. We don't hear that. And I said, well, help me understand what that is. And she's like, oh, well, when you're structuring 4 loans at one time or 10 loans at one time as a single product. And I'm like, people don't buy 10, like companies might, corporations might, but most people that call, even like your early investors, they're not buying, they're buying a multifamily, right? Or maybe one home here, one home there, but you're not buying packs the same way. So when I heard that, I said, okay, this is a different ball game. Need to know. I need to know more.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny you say that because right now I have a client that it's looking to purchase a 10 package of homes, and
10 pack.
we just got a 10 pack off market. They're asking 799 and 10 homes spread out between the city of Detroit.
Do you hear this? Do you hear this? $799,000 for 10 homes. And the
Yep.
other thing that I want that's really interesting, and I want people to hear this from the horse's mouth. I want to hear you say it. These are cash flowing properties.
Yes. Like these properties, they're all tenant occupied. 5 of them are Section 8. So the average rent that these properties are getting are between 1,000 to 1,100.
You said 1,000 to 1,100?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to share a screen and kind of show you some properties that I would say, hey, this is an okay investment, right? So let me pull up my website here. So of course we're on ianofAustin.com. Pull up houses. So like if I look for a house, let's say we're looking for a house in Round Rock, because that's a very popular suburb of Austin where people are looking for an investment property, right? I want to look for something that I get a lot of. I want 3-bed, 2 baths, or 4 beds, 2 baths, or 3 beds in an office. So I'm going to do four beds, and I'll do for baths, I'll do 2 to 3, and I'll just keep it like that, nice and simple. I'll actually do 3 here. Okay, property type, I want a single family, because this is what a lot of people are looking for, and I'll make sure that I'm only looking for sale.
Dude, it's so cool. You got your own website. That's cool.
You guys don't do website? You don't have your own websites?
I don't have my own website.
What? Oh my gosh. Oh man. Oh yeah. Like you're not doing anything here if you don't have a website here, because we're like a tech-centric city. Okay, so I'm looking at these properties. Like, look at these prices. So we're in Round Rock, 349, 395, 325. I'm going to do a quick sort. I want to see some of the lower priced homes. Look, 225 right now. You're looking at 1,200 square feet. Right? We have not had this for a decade. This is new, where it's kind of come down, right? Like 2017, 2018, this is where those prices started climbing a little bit more than that. And so when you see prices this high right now, there's so many people that were worried about affordability. Don't get me wrong. We have affordability concerns when it comes to interest rates and taxes, which I'll get to in a second, but $253,000 for a house that's been sitting for a little bit. The price was recently dropped, 3 beds, 2 baths, and you might have an opportunity to, do a little bit of work to it and resell it, or just get it rented.
Yeah.
The question is this going to be cash flowing? A house like this might rent here for like $1,200 to $1,500. It really depends on the neighborhood and some of the other things. And so if you're looking at that, your mortgage, you're rarely cash flowing today with the interest rates and the price of the properties. That's what's challenging, because we have a property tax rate. So like this property would probably be a 1.9% tax rate. So what that means is if we have it for $253,000, you'd multiply that by 1.9%, and then that's your annual property tax rate with a few variables in there. Mm-hmm. So that's us.
Gotcha.
So now you tell me a little bit about yours. I showed you yours. You show me mine. Do you have what do you want to pull up?
I want to share with you my screen. This is actually a property that we just put under contract today.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Show me some real stuff.
Yeah. Let me see. Share screen.
And anybody who's watching this, make sure you drop some comments, ask some questions, because Renzo, he might be, I'll say, newer to the game, but he's been crushing it. In fact, that's been spending so much time with him and his team.
Can you see my screen again?
I did. I have it shared. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a duplex in the city of Detroit. as you can see here, it's listed at 125,000. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a duplex.
125.
The bottom unit's already rented at 850 a month. And the very cool thing is that this property has been already, somewhat updated. So just based on my numbers and based on what I see on the market, I know this unit can rent for $900 a month, like all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my client is purchasing this with a DSCR loan. She's putting
Yep.
20% down. DSCR is cool if you know.
So can you explain the DSCR for people? No, it's the income based. Yeah.
Yep, sure.
Yep.
So, the DSCR, it's an investment loan. I like it a lot because, you don't have to show any personal income or any tax returns. The loan is, based on the performance of the property. So
What's
basically,
the
let's say
interest rate right now?
it could vary, but we're seeing between, 8 to 9%. Depends on,
Okay, so you've
like,
got a
who you go
9% loan,
Mm.
no tax documents. The property's cash flowing, so it covers its own, like it's its own collateral, right? You've already got a tenant in the bottom unit, and because it's only $125,000, mortgage isn't going to be much different than that.
Yep. So the mortgage, and me, I like to go, like the extra mile, and I also calculate, like, for example, maintenance costs, management fees,
Always.
CapEx repairs. So all in, the expenses are gonna be at around 1,251,
Right?
and the income is gonna be $1,750.
Yeah.
So when we subtract the monthly income minus the monthly expenses, it gives me a cash flow of $498.
Now, so there are a couple other components. Obviously, property management can be necessary. Is this particular situation, are they leveraging property management?
In this case, no, because I advise all my clients, if it's your first property, you don't really have to hire a property management
Of
company.
course.
I rather, have them learn
If you're
first.
local,
That's
if you're
a good
local,
point.
and maybe
you're
even
local.
if you're handy, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later.
If you're local, 100%, I advise you to, manage the property yourself, so you can actually learn what it takes to be a property management. So that way, when you, build a big enough portfolio and you actually want to hire a property management, then if these guys that you could possibly hire are good managers or not, because you already know what it takes.
Yeah.
But
What are
if you're
your?
someone from
Can
out
you
of
give me
state-
like an average rate for you for your area property management?
Oh, it's gonna be at about 10% of the monthly rent.
Yeah, ours. I mean, it really depends on the manager, but you can get up to like 12, 13%. However, generally they'll give you kind of a bulk discount, right? So you can get down to 8%, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Now I didn't hear you break out what the property taxes are. Can you give me an example on this property? Like, what are we looking at for property taxes?
Yep. So property taxes for that duplex, we're looking at about $2,000 a year.
It hurts right here, man.
Yeah. Now, that is not the case for every single property in the city of Detroit. Actually, Detroit's known for being a city that has, higher taxes. But the reason
compared
why,
to Texas, but I hear you.
yeah, but the reason why this one is only $2,000 a month is because this property was sold before through what's called a Detroit Land Bank, which is, like its own, private entity that sells, a lot of off-market portfolio in Detroit. So they basically get a tax break, for the next, 5 years of the last time the property was sold, which in this case was, 2018. So it's still in that, tax break, until
once it's gone through where there's no longer an exemption or a tax break, what would the normal taxes be for this property?
For this one, it's going to be around $4,000 to $5,000 a year.
Okay, there you go. That's the number I was looking for.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So, but by then you're already cash flowing. And at that point, depending on how much you've put into the property, how much you put down, and what you've leased it for, you could be where you don't feel that hit. You're still cash flowing even with the increase in property taxes is what I'm saying.
You still are. Yep. Correct. Yeah. And you're only purchasing this for 125, like my client, basically his total out of pocket cost, it's going to be only 32,000, because
can you pull that back up and just share it so we can continue talking through. The next thing I want to make sure that we're discussing is you have a lot of people that So I heard you say Section 8, right? Uh, and housing vouchers, essentially. I know a lot of investors, especially newer investors, may or may not have any type of familiarity with that. And so my question to you is, I guess, just tell me about your experience with housing voucher tenants in Detroit specifically.
So the key thing is you have to know how to screen these tenants. Section 8. I feel like there's a stigma with Section 8. People think that the people that are in the with the vouchers, as soon as they move into your property, they're gonna basically destroy it, and they're not going to take care of it. That does happen in some cases, but
Yeah,
there's also some great tenants, Section 8, because if the tenants don't comply with the rules and regulations of the property, then they could easily lose their vouchers. So,
absolutely. And
and
this
some
is
people have
guaranteed
waited
income.
years. Yeah, and some
This is
people have
guaranteed
waited
income.
years to
Yeah.
get into the program. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
I
And
just feel like you have to know how to properly screen them, because like, for example, like the property management that I work with, whenever there's a house that we want to accept Section 8 tenant, when someone wants to apply, we tell them, hey, okay, you want to apply to my property, but I want to see your current residence. I want to see how you take care of your property. And if they say no, I don't want you to come into my current house, automatically it's like no, we're probably not going to deal with you because you don't want to let us come in, because most likely you're not taking care of this property. It's probably dirty, and you're not taking care of it. So that automatically kind of like erases like 80-85% of our tenant pool. So it'll take a little longer to rent, but I rather have the house sitting empty than to put a bad tenant inside, and then the problems start with them not taking care of the property, because there's some people that know how to work the system. Let me tell you, there's people that know how
oh
to
yeah.
work the system, and
No, no, no. I've
they call
dealt
it
with
inspect.
Section 8 and housing vouchers before, but people don't realize this. I've been in the business since 2015, 2016, and I've done everything from ranches, multifamily, commercial, Section 8, leases, apartments, houses. Like I've done all of it, all of it. Because, I'm a pretty good producer. And so when I have someone ask me about the Section 8 scenario, and I'm like, you could have a tenant that has a housing voucher that treats your property and appreciates the scenario better than a tenant that is 4x qualified on income for your single family property. It's really quite fascinating to see this, because just what you said is you have some people that have waited years to earn this opportunity, and if that person messes up, they lose that opportunity, and so they don't necessarily want to squander it. Sure, there are one-offs, maybe even three-offs, but in general, the goal is once you have it, you don't want to lose it. And so now you have a chance to get in only a handful of properties, right? Because the owner or the landlord has to be willing to accept the voucher, which is an easy process. You have to be willing to accept the voucher. And so, like you said, it's a limited amount of properties that these vouchers, that people with vouchers are able to get into. So I think it's a really fascinating opportunity, especially if I know that you're cash flowing on the property like this.
Yeah, no, it's as recession proof as you can get, because the government's paying you. They're guaranteeing you the rent.
Yeah.
So I like it too, because, for example, like if you were to, for X and Y reason, you have to evict the tenant, the government still guarantees you their part.
Now, I
And
do have a question on that.
mhm,
Without getting too political, do you feel like that is in any type of jeopardy? Yes or no?
I feel like Michigan is historically known for being like kind of like in the middle of being like a landlord friendly state. I feel
Okay,
like
that's good
like
to
the
know.
Reds.
That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it's kind of in the middle, because I've seen cases where it's taken like 6 to 9 months to evict someone from your property. I've seen other cases where the process is a little faster. So me personally, I'm gonna say like it's like right in the middle. I don't know if I don't think it's a landlord or tenant friendly state. I think it's in the middle. I think it just depends on like like your specific situation, and like how fast the court can act on your behalf.
Yeah.
That's at least what I can tell you from my perspective.
All right, that's good. Hey, so like, how large is this property? Not that it matters so much because you told me how much is cash flowing, but I'm curious, how large is it?
So how big? So it is about, so 2 units. It's about 1,920 square feet. So almost 2,000 square feet.
So 2,000, so 1,000 per unit, and you're getting about $1 a square foot in rent.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah, okay, it's good, man. It's interesting. And then this is also including insurance. I know you said maintenance. You talked about utilities. Well, you wouldn't be paying. Your owner wouldn't be paying utilities, but at least they don't, do they? Here we don't.
Yeah, it's negotiable, but we always want to put the responsibility into the tenant, because we want the tenants to be responsible for those utilities, because in the city of Detroit, it's very known for tenants to sometimes they don't pay their water bill, and when they don't have their own account, the outstanding balance could stick with the property. So when it's time to sell, if you never made that adjustment, then it falls on the owner to pay that bill off.
Yeah.
So in our cases, we always want to put our responsibility onto the tenant, and we need the tenant to turn in the utilities on their name with their own account. So that way, if they never pay, that bill follows them and not the owner.
Absolutely, you want to offset a lot of the responsibility and maintenance requirements. Makes sense.
Yep.
What you don't have any HOAs in the Metro Detroit, right?
Not in, at least not where I invest. Not there.
So,
no.
So then you don't have any issues with how many people are parking in front of the property and all that. You get to dictate it.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's city
when I
ordinances
say you, I'm talking about you
but...
and your property owners and your landlords. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. But we don't let our tenants, like park their car on the front lawn, or like put it on, on the curb. Like, no, we tell them, like, rules and regulations, they have to follow them. We don't want to get hit, with any fees by the city. But there's no HOA, so like there's more freedom, to do, kind of like what you want to do.
Well, and so I'm originally from Chicago, and I'm actually going to be driving up there for the second time this year.
Chi-town.
But I bring that up because every time I drive toward the end of January, I end up getting caught in a blizzard. I'm noticing this property, at least I'm not seeing it. In Chicago, we have alleys usually. And then in Texas, we don't have alleys. They're not very common, but we have front-facing garages. I'm not seeing a garage here, and I can't tell if there's an alleyway in the back. Can you talk a little bit about that for this property?
Yeah, so for this specific property, there's no garage. That is true. So there's only a driveway and street parking.
Okay, is that common?
Yeah, that is very common. Yeah, that is very
common. And the reason why I ask is because, like, we have pretty strange weather. I think it was yesterday. Sunday, it started raining. So in Austin, it was raining, and then it started hailing. And so all of our cars are parked outside because we don't have basements. And so since we don't have basements, our cars are usually outside and exposed unless you have a large oak tree or something in front of your home. And so I'm wondering, in Chicago, this wasn't much of an issue. It was just like the rock salt and all that. So there, you don't have any issues with anything. People don't have, cars damaged, break-ins.
So
you gotta be honest with people,
No, for sure. I do want to be honest, and it just really depends on where you invest. Like there's still like high crime in some pockets of Detroit, but we always steer our investors in areas where we know that the crime it's not as high, or at least it's being moderated by by the police.
Let's talk about that. In Texas, we're not allowed to talk about crime rate as realtors in Texas.
Yeah.
I wish. I mean, more in that, like, I can provide a crime map. I can say, hey, go check out, like on my website, I've got a crime map. Cool. You can go there and you can look it up. But I can't say, oh, this area is not good, because not good is relative to the person and their personal experiences, right? So like it's steering, right? I'm saying, oh, stay out of this neighborhood or go to this neighborhood because of the crime or because of the schools. But who am I to say that the schools aren't good for you? right? Or the
Yeah.
crime isn't good for you. Like I've lived in Chicago. I've lived on Runberg in Austin. I've lived in I've been in the favelas in Brazil. Like I've been everywhere. I can blend in everywhere. So crime is different for me versus, like I was in a White Lotus scenario, not in Colombia, in Costa Rica a couple weeks ago on a resort, and I'm thinking, man, this is a different life. It's a different life. All right, okay. So, talk to me a little bit about. So people are looking at this. Obviously, if anybody's watching this and you want to get in touch with Renzo, make sure you leave a comment. Talk a little bit about Detroit, about Austin, what you'd like to see. But you can always DM me, but I'll put his contact information in the description as well. I'll set that up. But we have a relationship, so make sure you let me know if you wanna work a deal, because we'll work on it together with you.
Of course.
So Renzo, you've got. What would you say is a pretty? Would you say that what you just showed is a pretty common occurrence for available options in Detroit?
Yeah, this is where your typical, Detroit, neighborhood looks like. This actually looks, a lot
But I mean,
better.
finding properties like that cash flow that you think it's a solid investment, and you're getting a couple hundred a month, pretty easily.
Yeah, 100%. Right now, I truly believe that if you want something that cash flows as much as possible, especially with a DSCR loan, you have to go for a small multifamily. It has to be a 2, 3, 4 unit.
Yeah, it
It's
can't
really
be
hard
single
for a
family.
single. Yeah, it's really hard for a single family to cash flow on itself.
Yeah.
So that's why we focus, on small multifamily homes. And this, so the first thing I do when I look at a property that just pops up online, first thing I do is I look at the Google Street View, because I can see, what the growth, has been in the last, couple of years, or how recent, the Street View is, because it kind of lets me know if there's other people investing in this pocket, or if there's, or if no one is, buying homes. In this case, this Street View is from 2022,
Yep.
and in person, it actually looks a lot better than what I see here on the screen. That's why it's also important that you have to make the drive. You have to go check out these properties.
Let's actually talk about that. So I've got a lot of people, a lot of clients, a lot of people in Austin that are like, man, it's so hard to get to really get into that inertia in investing, right? So if they might own one property, they might own two, but they might want to have 20 doors, right? So it's hard sometimes for people to get that inertia going. And I just want to say, having boots on the ground is extremely important, right? Because they don't necessarily need to fly out there to see the properties. But if you have somebody that you trust, that you're working with, you can go, like what I'll do for investors, for people, is I'll go and walk through, and I'll do like a video walkthrough and upload it to them so that they can see what the property's like, right? So you could be that person if somebody's in Austin and they're like, yeah, maybe I want to get a 4-pack in Detroit.
No, 100% on that. I think you're absolutely right. Really, who you work with matters, especially if you're out of state. You gotta have a team. You gotta have a team of, a realtor, contractor, property manager, like handymans, like title companies. Like you really need to build a team. The more people the better it's gonna go for you.
Yeah, and it's the same everywhere. It's the same in Austin, same in Detroit. So if you're looking for that, obviously Renzo has all those connections there. I have all those connections here. It's really, really cool that you have like a product that can cash flow today easily versus us, where like I'm showing some multifamily, like 485, 487, 525. This is a AB unit, so duplex, right? But like, look at this price. That one was what? How much was that?
125.
125. We're talking 525 for almost the same, like 100 square foot more. And our rent on this property, I mean, I haven't, I don't know if it's going to pull it up on the site, but I'm going to guess the rent is $1,400 for this property, right? So you're looking at about $3,000 rent on a 525 mortgage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, Ian, have you heard of Pad Split?
Say it again.
Have you heard of Pad Split, the company Pad Split?
No, I haven't. You said
So
Pad Split,
yeah, pad split. So
PAD?
yep. So
No, I haven't heard of
basically,
them. What do they do?
this is a company that helps you rent your property by the room.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool. No, I've never used them. So I'm assuming you use them?
No, because they're not in Michigan yet. They do business in Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Florida, California. They still have not come to the Michigan market. But the rent by the room thing is something that I'm personally doing at one of my properties as well.
Yeah.
This property is not located in it's not in Detroit. It's actually located in a suburb that's next to Detroit. It's called Hazel Park,
Okay.
and it's me and my brother, we purchased a house that has 6 bedrooms,
Yep.
and right now we are renting by the room. So right now we have 4 bedrooms fully occupied, and we're getting between $800 to $900 a month in rent just for one
Yeah.
room.
Yeah, we have some apps out there like that. Like we have Roomster and stuff like that, but the management component isn't really there. So you're saying this Pad Split app is a solid app for like a property owner to be able to manage multiples? Because Roomster isn't made for multiples. It's like, hey, I've got this place and I need a roommate.
Yep, that's true. So PadSplit, it's basically like a property management company,
Oh,
but
I love
for
it.
they specialize in co-living. It's called co-living. They specialize in by the room. So they help you get leads for tenants. They screen them. They handle their old payments and secure the deposits. It's just like insane like what they're doing in other markets.
I'll tell you what, every time I talk to you and anybody on your team, I learn something every time, right? It's just the way we do business is so very different. Like the cities, the tools that we have, the way we think about the products and what can be a solid investment. So I'm really excited. So I'm gonna sign up for this Pad Split. I think this is a really cool idea. Look into it a little bit more. Man, this is a solid site. Actually, I'm gonna share this for
Yeah,
people
because
to
I
see.
was suggesting it because like that's a way that other investors are kind of making their properties cash flow, even if it's a single family. Because
Yeah.
like we mentioned before, if you buy this with a DSCR loan and you just rent it, just the whole house itself to a tenant, you're only gonna get 1,200 to $1,300 a month in rent. But
Absolutely.
if it's let's say a 3 4 bedroom property, and you rent each room, for like $800, then you're not making 1,200 anymore. You're making 3,600. You're
Oh
making
yeah.
2,800. So
You
that's
know,
another way how we make properties cash flow nowadays.
this is very much like university pricing. So we have we're a college town, so we have a lot of different, I think 13 or something different universities within the Austin metro, um, like decent sized universities. And so we have like near UT, there are places where it's a full apartment complex essentially, but when you go and you choose a unit, you might have a unit where it's there might be 10 rooms and then a shared living space, shared
Hmm.
kitchen, a couple bathrooms, but then 10 units. And they'll charge each person because it's close and because it has wonderful amenities, because it's close to the college and has wonderful amenities, they'll charge each room $1,500.
Oh my God,
And I'm
that's
like,
insane.
okay, that's a different ball game. And people are wondering why they can't afford a house. It's because stuff like that. I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying this is a big deal. So now you're saying this Pad Split lets your average everyday investor or consumer or your smaller investor be able to leverage profits to that um, to that level. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And listen,
Look at these
they don't even have to
250,
use Fastly. I'm sorry.
almost 250 a week for a living room. You're just getting the living room and the kitchen. Yeah, like it's a couch. I don't know. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to start
Yeah,
comparing this and seeing,
yeah.
because you also have to consider occupancy rates and all that too, right? Like if you have, because I was an Airbnb superhost for a while, and you don't always have somebody in there unless your property is like on the water, in a city uh, where the climate's always consistent, right? Like it can be a little challenging, especially once it gets saturated. And Austin is a little more saturated when it comes to Airbnb and Vrbo. So I'm wondering if this doesn't seem, there's only 26 houses in Austin right now that are using this platform. So it seems like a really good opportunity. Thanks for putting my viewers onto it.
Yeah, of course, and they don't even have to use PadSplit, but they can still leverage the strategy that's called co-living.
Yeah, but it makes it easy. I love tools that bring value and are simple to use. Love them.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. But PadSplit, they're not paying me for this or anything like that. I just want to throw it out there because I know that that's what other investors that I know are using, in other markets like yours, like Austin. So.
Yep. Very cool. All right, man. Is there anything else that you think is crucial that people need to know if they're thinking, like, comparing between Austin and Detroit? Like, is there anything else, like any nuggets that you can share? Because this has been super valuable, but I want to make sure that everybody's got, something to bring home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, like if you're someone that wants to invest in the city of Detroit, I really believe that you have to work with the right people. You have to work with an agent that specializes in working with investors. Because as you know, Ian, there's a ton of agents out there, but there's only select ones that actually know how to do investments, right?
Oh
So.
yeah, everybody will say it. It is so frustrating when an agent will just take any client and it's like, I've done these. Have you done one of these? Well, no, but I can figure it out. It's like, oh man. And so then you end up when you're dealing with an agent on the other side that hasn't had this kind of experience, now you're coaching them through their own transaction. It could be a win for your client, but it's kind of frustrating because now you have to do double the work for same pay.
Exactly, and I'm someone that it's investing too. I'm actively investing too. So,
Same, yeah.
I can give my feedback and I can give my, my tips, and tricks to people that work with me. So I think it's extremely important to, really get in touch with an agent that knows what they're doing, especially in the investment side of things, and someone that knows the market. Because, like we were discussing Detroit, we call it, like a very, it's like a block by block market because like one block, like one, a street could be very nice, people could take care of it. You turn around the corner and it's completely the opposite. So you have to be very strategic on where you buy.
Yeah, Austin proper is like that too. I don't think it's at the level of Detroit because I've walked both streets and it's something. And Detroit has there's some pretty areas. And when I'm seeing the things that are the revitalization happen, I'm like, okay, if it wasn't snowing, I could see myself living here, at least for a little while. That's just me though. Anyway, Renzo, man, thank you so much. Like I said, anybody who's watching, give Renzo some props, ask him some questions, and I'll make sure to put his information in the description later. Renzo, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending the time.
Brother.
I'll
we'll
see
do
you
it again
soon.
We'll do it again soon, man. Take care. How are you going, brother? Bye.